I love Wednesdays because that's when Kevin Danna joins me. And on today's show, we're going to talk about the defending world champion Warriors. 10% of the season is in the books, and the Warriors are 2 games below 500. They have yet to win on the road. They have the worst defense in the NBA, but I'm not hitting panic buttons. I don't know if Kevin's hitting them yet. We'll find out in just a moment. But Dub Nation, I can understand you being a little concerned. I think that's a valid emotional response to what's going on. We're going to break it all down next. This is Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, it's where the game starts. You follow Kevin Danna, the voice of the Santa Cruz Warriors, who tip off their season this Saturday. I hope I'm correct on that.
Friday, off by 1 day.
Oh, Friday. I'm sorry. Friday, November 4th. We're only 2 days away.
Yeah.
You can follow Kevin Danna on Twitter at Kevo4Wade. You can follow me, Cyrus Saatsaz, on Twitter at DogSurfRoadshow. Kevin, your immediate reaction to the Golden State Warriors losing a game that Steve Kerr, Stephen Curry, and others have called a performance of great effort, despite the scoreboard not indicating as such. What is your reaction to the Warriors now being 0-3 on this road trip?
I mean, I do think it was the best game they played, more or less from front to back on the road trip, I should say, because obviously they played better in their 3 wins to start the season. But yeah, there were a couple of things. I thought, and Slater pointed this out, and this is kind of what I thought even before I read Slater, the game turned with 4 minutes to go in the first quarter. Like, they got off to such a great start defensively. Miami had scored like 9 points in the first half of the first quarter. It's 21-15. Draymond Green, Andrew Wiggins come out. And then Miami, which had scored 15 points in the first 8 minutes, blitzed the Warriors for 18 points over the next 4. And obviously the Warriors came back to take a 10-point lead from beyond there. But like that defensive identity that was set just got smashed. And, you know, we're going to talk, I assume, about kind of the issues that the reserves have had, you know, throughout the year. There were some encouraging signs, I thought, later from the reserves. But yeah, I mean, it's tough and it's frustrating. Like, when you're losing games, this is going to sound stupid, but when you're losing games, these are the kind of games that you lose instead of win. Like, if the Warriors were like in a good rhythm, they would have beaten Charlotte. They would have beaten Miami. Yeah, they probably still lose the Detroit back end of a back-to-back. But these are the kind of games that, like, if like kind of like coin flip games, that when you're rolling, you win those coin flip games. And they're not rolling right now, and they lost. And you could say whatever you want about the foul call with a $139 that got overturned on the Steph Curry 3. I think I saw some of your thoughts on Twitter, Cyrus, and I'm sure we'll probably get into that as well. But like, when it's not rolling right, I kind of think back to like the Orlando loss last year. Like, at any other junction of the season, they smoked the Magic.
Mm-hmm.
And they played in Orlando. That was like the nadir of their season. And they lost like a really frustrating game. Then they came back and kicked Miami to the curb in one of like, in that 20-game stretch or whatever it was when they were playing terrible. They somehow like just blew the heat out of the water in that game. But like, I think back to like a loss like they had against Orlando last year, where if that was a different part of the season, they'd probably win that game.
Mm-hmm.
And just things aren't going well for Golden State right now. And just it's kind of mounting and snowballing. That being said, I did think it was their best performance of the road trip.
And I'm guessing you thought it was their best performance because they actually were showing energy. They were showing a little urgency, that you actually saw them exerting energy to defend 3-point shots. I still saw way too many open threes. And I need to start tracking like how many open threes there are. There's some websites that track measurements like that. But look, first things first, I was a little disappointed in the post-game press conference when the press pool did not ask her a single question about Jonathan Kuminga's DNP. I think that's newsworthy. I think that's a considerable story when you consider the fact that Kaminga last year averaged nearly 17 minutes a game, 16.9 more specifically. That number is way down this year in year 2. I saw a quote from Kerr where literally in the same quote, I can't remember where it came from. I don't know if it was like last night or today, but Kerr said that Kaminga is going to be fine. And he just needs NBA reps or experience to get better. And then in the same sense, he goes, yeah, he's not playing right now. And it's like, how is he going to get experience if he's not playing? How is he going to develop and get the reps if he's not playing? What are your thoughts so far on Jonathan Kuminga basically becoming persona non grata on this roster? Like, is it going to change, you think, when he starts showing whatever Kerr and company are looking for in practice? Like, what are your thoughts on this whole Kaminga thing? Because I think it's turning into a disaster, but that's just me. Maybe I'm being hyperbolic there. Your thoughts?
I mean, I do think disastrous is hyperbolic. Like, it is. We went through this last week where, like, Kaminga got a lot of DMPs to start the regular season. Then, obviously, like, he's not starting at the same square one that he was starting last year. So you would expect him to get more minutes than he has right now. I mean, it hasn't happened that way. It's also 8 games. I think he's going to get more time soon. And, like, he did play 19 minutes against the Detroit Pistons, in largely non-garbage time minutes. The rotations just didn't work out in his favor yesterday. And, like, I don't know enough about the Warriors game plan, or I'm in those coaching rooms to know, like, what rotations against which teams work best for a player like Jonathan Kuminga. I think you would like to see, obviously you want to see him get more time. I think everyone wants to see Jonathan Kuminga play more, but the minutes for whatever reasons Kerr and staff have determined have not been there. I don't think it's a disaster. I think he's just turned 20 years old, and, like, yeah, he had some really good moments last year. Don't get me wrong. I think the sky is the limit for Jonathan Kuminga. But, like, I do think Steve is making him earn it again. And, it's as simple as that. And you would think there would be more time out there for him, but that hasn't been the case when, JaMychal Green's kind of in his spot. And JaMychal Green's getting those minutes. And they've got a pretty tight, I guess, how many rotation minutes were there last night? I mean, how many? The 10-man rotation. It's tough to go beyond that. And Ty Jerome needs those backup point guard minutes. Who I'm a fan of. I'm sure we'll get into Ty a little bit later. But right now he's the odd man out. But that's going to change. Like I highly, highly doubt that we're going to see long stretches of DNPs for Jonathan Kuminga this year.
I hope so. I hope you're right. I mean, I don't understand what the big picture plan is here, because if you're not going to play him, how is he ever going to get better? I just don't. I don't know. Like, maybe he's going to be seeing time in Santa Cruz. Maybe you're right. And it's just at some point he's going to quote unquote earn it, whatever that means in practice or otherwise. Maybe Mike Brown favored him more than Kerr does. I mean, let me ask you this. What is your opinion on Mike Brown? You and I both feel very fondly about him as a coach and as a person. I hope I'm speaking accurately for you saying that. And I feel like his absence, his departure, you're feeling the impact of that. This was the team's defensive coordinator last year. They don't have a defensive coordinator this year. In what way do you think Mike Brown plays a role in all this and him not being there anymore?
I mean, I do think it's not nothing that he's gone, right? Like, the guy's a defensive mastermind, and now he's not on the staff anymore. Like, that is a significant loss, just like GP2 is a significant loss. And, like, those things can't be overlooked. I mean, there's no way around it. Like, that's a lot of brain trust to lose. That guy was in your locker room for 6 years, one of the best assistants in the NBA over the last 2 decades, going back to his days with Greg Popovich. Obviously had a lot of success as the Cleveland I was going to say Cleveland Browns, the Cleveland Cavaliers head coach. I don't think he coaches football, at least as far as I know. And now they've won 2 in a row in Sacramento after that 0-4 start. So they're starting to amass some wins in Sacramento, and I fully expect them to be a play-in team. That is not a negligible loss by any stretch. And I do want to make one more comment on Kaminga, because I wanted to make this comment last week, because I think either you said it. Correct me if did you say like it would not, like what kind of, maybe this wasn't you, what kind of signal it would send to put Kaminga in the G League for his second season?
I've expressed opinions on that, just in the sense that I do feel like it could have a negative impact psychologically, just in the sense that he was an important member of a world championship team, and in year 2 to send him down to the G League when his teammate Moses Moody, who's the same age, I mean, they're like 6 months off. They were drafted, in the same draft. Moody was actually 14th. I know Moody had the Musselman experience, and he's just a much more mature player. But I do wonder what kind of psychological impact that would have on Kaminga. With that said, if you're not going to play him at all, then send him there. I mean, like, what do you have to lose, right? But yeah, so I don't know. Maybe I said it, maybe I didn't. But
so my response to that would be like, Jordan Poole played his second year in the G League, like played significant time in the G League bubble, was there for almost the entire G League shortened season. So Jonathan Kuminga, like if it were to come to that, and I have no idea if he's going to play in the G League this year, I would doubt it personally. But like, he wouldn't have much of a room to complain, because he could look over to Jordan Poole, who used that time very well. He's one of the top scorers in the G League, got his mistakes out of the way, and then boom, his career kind of took off from there. So like, there is precedent sending a second-year rotation player down to the G League for this organization. Now I know, like, all right, Jordan Poole is the number 28 pick, and they were coming off a 15-50 season. It's a little different. But like, going back to, Jonathan Kuminga's minutes did go down significantly in the playoffs. Like, in the NBA Finals, he got in 4 games for a total of like 7 minutes. And he had one game where he played significantly against the Mavericks, and he had 2 DNPs in that series. He started against the Grizzlies, so like the youngest starter ever in the last 50 years in a playoff game or whatever it was. But like, as the playoffs went on, his numbers did go down. So like, yes, he was like a big part to contributing in the regular season, but like when push came to shove, the vets were playing in the NBA Finals. And so like, yeah, like I don't think it would send a bad message, like, because Wiseman went down there for a second year. I mean, obviously that was injury rehab. It was a totally different situation. But like, I mean, I think 10 years ago, it sends a bad message. I think at this point where the G League is, it's not seen as much of a demotion. Now, obviously, players would much rather be in the NBA than the G League. Who would? But like, I think that's kind of been solidified that, hey, the guy's coming to play in the G League doesn't mean his career is over, that it's the end of the world.
That's fair. And like I said, a lot's changed in the last week where, if he's just going to get DNPs, send him to Santa Cruz. I mean, the kid just needs to play. My entire concern is big picture, right? I still maintain that if Kaminga and Wiseman do not develop, if they don't look like completely different individuals come March, April, I don't think the Warriors repeat as world champions, plain and simple. Like they've clearly sent a message with the offseason maneuvers that, they're going to rely on them now. I thought we were going to see considerable minutes from them. I'll explain why this whole thing is really frustrating me in just a moment. And we're obviously going to touch on Jerome. I'm very curious to get your thoughts on Klay Thompson and Draymond Green, because I want to mention some defensive matchup stats of Green that indicate he's not doing great defensively. And it makes me wonder if, like, he's no longer the same player he was. But we'll touch on all that and more after I give some love to a longtime sponsor of this program, BetOnline. I know Kevin Danna is an ardent, addicted gambler. He bets on every game that he calls. I'm kidding, obviously. I'm not going to get you in trouble, Kevin. No, Kevin is very ethical.
Just call me Kevin Rose.
Kevin the Greek. But betonline.net is your number one source for betting football and the start of this new basketball season. And look, yesterday, the Steve Nash firing rocked, the NBA world. I don't think it was that surprising, but it is fascinating to see that train wreck in Brooklyn with all the talent they have there not coming to fruition, right? I mean, it's an absolute mess. And so since that happened, I just want to point out the 2023 NBA championship odds now have the Milwaukee Bucks as the favorite. It's 23-4 are their odds, or what is that, like 5.75 to 1?
Yeah.
Boston Celtics have moved up. They're now 6 to 1, and the Golden State Warriors are third at 7 to 1, in case you want to take some action on that. And then the Clippers are still weirdly fourth. I'm starting to. I mean, the Clippers aren't the Nets, but I also think they're showing you that maybe they're a little overrated. That just because a piece of paper shows a lot of talent doesn't necessarily mean it's going to translate to success on the basketball court. And then rounding out the top five are the Phoenix Suns. The Brooklyn Nets, by the way, plummeted in the rankings. They're now 14 to 1. I think they were 7 to 1 not that long ago. Anything stick out to you there in terms of the odds on title favorites here on November 2nd?
Well, I mean, Kawhi Leonard's got to play more than like 2 out of every 7 games. Like, that's if Kawhi is fully healthy and he's going to play like 60 games in every playoff game, then yeah, the Clippers would be one of the favorites in the West. Until then, like, I got to no, they're not. Like, Paul George is a very, very good player, and he can lift them to the playoffs himself, but he can't lift them to the Western Conference Finals by himself.
Agreed. And by the way, the game tomorrow, the Warriors and the Magic, this is a wild line. I mean, the odds makers clearly feel like the Warriors are pissed. They're going to come out like gangbusters. They're favored by 8.5 over the Magic in tomorrow's game. The over under 226.5. I feel like if that's how the odds makers feel, that over looks good. Any thoughts on tomorrow's line? The Warriors favored by 8.5 over the Magic.
Well, yeah, I can't make any comments on a line involving any, especially involving the Warriors or whatever.
Fair.
Will say that like the Orlando Magic are 1-7, and like that they have grabbed defeat from the jaws of victory a couple of times this year.
Yeah.
Like, they let the Thunder go on like a 23-4 run in the fourth quarter last night for a game that they largely led. How about the 4-3 Oklahoma City Thunder? Anyways, Mark Daigneault. I mean, I go back with him back to, the 2014-15 G League season when he was the Oklahoma City Blue head coach. Love that guy. I think he's done a hell of a job there for the Thunder. Like, everyone just thinks that team's going to lose 70 games every year, and they do find a way to scratch out mid-20s, 22-50 in his first season in the shortened COVID year. I think they were like 24-58 last year. I could be wrong, but somewhere around there. Like, they're going to be competitive up until the point they shut players down, if that's the case. That's kind of what they did last year. So we'll see, but like, they're going to be competitive. And yeah, I know you didn't ask me about.
No. Any basketball talk from you is gold. I just want to add on to that. The entire Western Conference is just in a bizarre world right now. I mean, the Phoenix Suns, look, they won 64 games last year. It's not a shock. They're leading the West at 6-1. It surprises me a little bit. I thought they would be more dysfunctional by now. I also don't understand why they continue being tryhards in the regular season. We've seen what that does to a team that's veteran laden,
Well, I mean, you gotta win games.
Yeah.
Like, you gotta win games to get to the playoffs. Like, why would you not try hard to win games in the regular season?
Because for a team like the Suns, I mean, isn't a big picture goal a world championship? And we've seen the last.
So they should trick off games in the regular season.
Well, look at the Warriors are doing. The Warriors do that year after year, and their model is fine. I look at like LeBron. I mean, he load managed. You look at Kawhi Leonard, who's load managing left and right. I mean, the vision for them is clear. World title, the Suns, man. I mean, you saw how hard they tried in that Warriors game where they beat them handily. It's like, great, congrats on your regular season victory. But, history doesn't remember, regular season success nearly as much as postseason. So I don't know. I do think like they put a little too much emphasis on the regular season. That's just me. It could be wrong. But I look at the standings, and outside of the Trailblazers 5-1.
Yeah.
What? The Jazz 6-2. The Spurs 5-2. And you mentioned the Thunder 4-3. I don't know what the hell is going on in the West right now. Any explanation from you? I mean, other than maybe a lot of tryhards out there.
Yeah.
It's the veteran team.
Yeah, it's 2 weeks into the season. That's my explanation. Like the Warriors went on a 6 of 20 bender last year, or whatever it was, through like February
True.
or March. When they just they couldn't win.
Right.
So like these things happen. Like teams that go 25 and 57, they will have a stretch where they win 5 of 7 games. Like if the standings are like this on January 15th, if the Blazers are still the 2 seed, the Jazz are like hosting a first round series, and the Spurs are in the top 5, like I would be shocked.
Agreed.
Like if we've played, but some of those teams have played like 8% of their season. So I'll slow my roll on the Jazz winning 50 games this year.
Yeah, you're right. If this is happening in January, man, my eyes are wide open and shocked.
Yeah.
But again, you can bet on all this stuff. There's so much to have fun with. Just go to betonline.net to find all that information. And of course, BetOnline's main website. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, it's where the game starts.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen today. After you're done with us, check out Locked On Sports today. From the games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports today, available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow Kevin Danna, the voice of the Santa Cruz Warriors, who make their debut this Friday, November 4th, in Santa Cruz, right? It's a home game. Is that correct? Awesome.
Home game against the Ontario Clippers.
Oh, look at that. Beautiful. Ontario, which is located near like Oxnard and Ventura. That's the Clippers G League team. You can follow Kevin Danna on Twitter at Kevo408. Klay Thompson and Draymond Green are 2 names that have been mentioned a lot lately because these are 2 players who are they're in their early 30s. I do not consider that old per se for an NBA player, but Klay Thompson's coming back from those 2 horrific injuries. Charles Barkley, by the way, doubled down last night. I don't know if you saw that on Inside the NBA regarding his comments saying that Klay is slipping. He thinks Klay's done. And even though like he was chastised a little by Kenny Smith, by Shaquille O'Neal, saying his comments were not only insensitive, but just inaccurate because we have no idea what version of Klay we're going to get. He did not have a normal offseason. He's still ramping up his conditioning. You could tell off his shots. I mean, every time those shots fall short and hit the front of the rim, that is just Klay not being where he needs to be in terms of conditioning. Let's start there first, man. Based on the eye test and based on measurables as well, the statistics are not exactly like shining right now. What is your assessment of Klay Thompson 8 games in?
Yeah, I mean, we have seen, obviously it's a different circumstance this year, but we've seen him get off to really cold starts to seasons before. Like the 18-19 season, before he hit 14 threes in Chicago, like it was a ghastly start to the season. So that, the slow start itself, the numbers themselves, not particularly concerning to me. I mean, yeah, like Klay said in his post-game presser after the win over Miami, on Thursday, like in response to Charles Barkley, of course he's not the same, right? Like, no duh. Like, it's going to take time for him to get back to that. I do think, like, if we are having this conversation in March, then yeah, there would be some concern there. But like I he is ramping up. He played 31 minutes last night, and he had a really good third quarter. That was a really nice sight to see. But yeah, he has started slow in most games. I feel like I do feel like his defense kind of step by step continues to get a little bit better, where he'll have some really solid on ball possessions where he is guarding. Like third quarter against Phoenix, like before he got ejected, I thought like he was really starting to get into Devin Booker's shorts.
Agreed.
Now, Devin Booker eventually, lit the Warriors aflame, but I thought, there was that competitive fire was lit. All right, is he the best defensive option for Golden State on the perimeter with Andrew Wiggins there? No, like Andrew Wiggins probably is your key defensive stopper now as far as guarding, guys of the Jason Tatum ilk. That wouldn't be a Klay Thompson assignment anymore necessarily for the bulk of the game. But, I mean, I still think he has a lot left in the tank. I still think he is far from being done. Like, I think that's way too much of a proclamation for one person to make. I am like, he hasn't played a full season's worth of games yet since returning from the injury. It's close to like 60 games now. So if for a guy who has needed more of a runway to start regular seasons in the past before these injuries, like, I think it's natural. And yeah, no, there are things where, like, yeah, he's short on a lot of his shots. Like you mentioned, Cyrus, that, yeah, maybe the conditioning probably isn't there because he didn't play a lot of pickup because the last time he played pickup, he tore his Achilles, which is, as far as I'm concerned, totally understandable. So, yeah, I mean, but like large picture, and I know I keep on saying this, but like, I don't think this is enough of a sample size to say that Klay Thompson's career is over or he's on the downswing. Like, let's see what it's like halfway through the season. Let's see what it's like in the postseason. I mean, at the end of last regular season, he got on a tear for Golden State. Like, he got his average up north of 20 points per game when he was hovering around 16, 17, 18 for a good chunk of, the 32, 33 games, however many he played last year. And I don't know if he's going to average 20 a game this year. What is he at right now through 8 games? Going to quickly look this up.
I got it right here. He's averaging, what do you look for, points or?
Yeah, he's at 13.3 right now.
Correct.
Like, I expect that to, on his splits, 35, 30, 88. Like, yeah, those numbers are going to go north. I
hope so. I mean, those are like his career lows for him easily.
Yeah, I don't think that's within doubt.
Yeah.
Like, I think he's clearly going to, get those shooting numbers up.
Yeah, I don't doubt that either. The only thing about him that concerns me a little bit right now, and I do think it has a lot to do with conditioning, is I just don't see him looking light-footed out there, especially when it comes to defense. Not so much man-on-man D, but more so when opposing teams are swinging the ball around looking for an open three-pointer.
That's fair.
I don't see him chasing like he normally does. And I don't know if that's conditioning, but I'm also not seeing that from a lot of players. I think Kaminga, the reason why he's not playing is because when he does get minutes, you don't see that hustle, right? Like, you don't see that 100% all or nothing type of attitude. I don't see that from him. And for Kaminga, there's no excuse for that. For Klay Thompson, yeah, he's building back his conditioning. He's trying to get back in game shape. That makes a little more sense. Now, Draymond Green is a player that the eye test sits when I'm sitting here saying this from my own observation skills. He looks a little chubby. I know he said he came in great shape, and he looks like he's in. I'm sorry, and he doesn't look like he's like belaboring out there. But he does have he looks a little chubby, right? That's just my observation skills. But when you look at how he has done as a defensive player in terms of one-on-one matchups, Jimmy Butler, for example, in 2 games against the Heat this year, he's shot 5 of 9 when matched up with Draymond Green. That's 55.6% from the field. Jimmy Butler, who over the last 3 years has shot 25% from 3, he's been 4 of 6 from 3. The man who was assigned to him was supposed to be defending him was Draymond Green. A weird pattern I'm noticing with Draymond Green, which I don't like, is that a lot of times when he's running to the perimeter shooter who's putting up a 3-point attempt, his hands aren't up. I don't know if that's conditioning. I don't know. It just looks like he just gives up, like he's running to him. And instead of having his hands straight up, so at a minimum, vision is obscured. At a minimum, it adds a little more pressure to the shooter. He just kind of runs up to him with his hands down. I've never seen that before. That's a little weird to me. But you look at the matchups on the season, like in that Kings game, Keegan Murray shot 3 of 4 with him guarding him. Aaron Gordon shot 2 of 5. Bojan Bogdanovic in that Pistons game was a perfect 3 for 3 when Draymond guarded him. Jokic was 2 for 4 from the field when he was guarding him. DeAndre Ayton went 4 for 6 with Draymond guarding him. I could go down this list and give you a lot of other players, like Max Strus was 1 for 2. Caleb Martin was 1 for 2. Gordon Hayward in that Hornets game was 2 for 4. These are players shooting 50% or better against an individual that the Warriors count on so much for his defense more than anything else. I know he's a fantastic offensive facilitator, and passing wise, he still lights out. That's one thing I'm not going to complain about because he's making passes that are just wild out there. But his defense is concerning me. And again, this is now when you talk about the 32 thing as an age, this is someone that has a hernia in his lower back. That's not going away. All he can do is just build muscles around it and hope for the best. That part concerns me. Am I crazy? Is my concern overblown to you? What are you seeing, man? Are you seeing the same thing? Are you seeing something totally different? Your thoughts on Draymond Green?
Well, with respect to the Jimmy Butler numbers, Draymond wants him to shoot that shot, and he's made it against Golden State. Like, and Jimmy Butler, even going back to the bubble season, I feel like he has gone into Golden State games just shooting terribly from three, and then just finds a way to bomb a couple threes. But like those contests I've noticed against Jimmy Butler, where it's just like he's daring him to shoot. That's the shot that Draymond wants him to take. And for a guy who is not a good 3-point shooter, I would live with Jimmy Butler shooting threes all day because he doesn't want to take a lot of threes. With respect to the other, like you mentioned the stats on the other guys, anyone who was 1 of 2 against Draymond, I think that's too small of a sample size.
But
like 2 of 4
let me throw this
like
to you, because for the 3-point shooting, like Keegan Murray was 2 for 3 from beyond the arc. Bogdanovich, who is a lights out shooter, was a perfect 2 for 2. I saw that with him as well. Like, he just runs up to him and doesn't have the hands up. I don't know why that is. If he's just tired. Chris Paul was 1 for 2 from 3. Kyle Lowry was 1 for 2 from 3 with Draymond on him. I just, there's something going on there, man. You don't see it? Is it just me?
No, I mean, I haven't necessarily noticed that beyond like the Jimmy Butler games, because for some reason, like I kind of I'm locked on Jimmy Butler, like 3-point attempts against Golden State. And so like I specifically noticed him like daring Butler to shoot. I can't say that I made the same observation, so I don't disagree. I can't like support or tear down your statement.
Yeah, and just for anyone watching or listening as well, pay attention, because I've been starting to kind of lock on him, and I'm watching him like on every possession. I'm starting to really focus on him just to see his impact defensively, and I'm seeing a step loss, man, and I really hope that it's just early season, post championship, like apathy, because that is a very real thing. If anything, I felt assuaged last night listening to Kenny Smith and Shaq, both of whom have championship experience, repeat championship experience, and they both were talking about how when they won their titles the following year, it sometimes takes them until like January to start kind of really caring. Because you just literally were in the most intense battles imaginable on a basketball court. And then all of a sudden now it's like game 5 of the regular season. It's just hard to wake up to that level of competition when you've literally just gone into a war with the Celtics defense that was many considered one of the greatest ever. But at the same time, I hope that's all it is, because Draymond it's worrying me a little bit. That concerns me, I think, more than anything else. Well, what is your thoughts on James Wiseman, by the way? I feel like he's getting unfair criticism. This is a player who is young. He's developing. And with young players, defense comes last in terms of development, typically. I think offensively, he's playing at times great. I mean, just being a lob threat, being an inside threat for the Warriors has been awesome, right? That's something they didn't have much of last year, but he's getting criticism defensively. He's getting criticism for, not being a terrific shot blocker, maybe, for being slow-footed out there defensively. What is your assessment of James Wiseman, who you've seen up close and personal plenty of times? And obviously, I respect your opinion tremendously. I would love to know what your thoughts are on Wiseman through 8 games.
One final comment on Draymond before I move to James, and I do have plenty to say about James. But I do think, all right, I haven't noticed those defensive things that you mentioned. I'll take your word for it. Like, I'm not the most observant person watching a game. Like, you're keyed on to that, so you've been studying it more than me. I do feel like Draymond Green's made a ton of really good defensive plays this year. Like there was that fast break was it Detroit or Charlotte, where like he just came back and
Agreed.
batted an alley-oop away. I feel like I've seen him. I mean, he had 3 steals last night. I think his presence is still being massively felt on the defensive end. And as soon as he got off the floor against Miami, the defense cratered.
Yeah, that's fair.
In the first quarter. To James Wiseman, where do I want to start? The defense has generally not been good. The defensive rate, I don't know what it is now, but like going into the game last night, it was like 118.9 or something, which is, I think, like second worst on the team.
Ooh.
He's obviously not the only one having defensive issues. The whole team is.
The bench especially. Yeah,
the bench especially. The one thing that I noticed last night from James is that when he switched on to guard ball handling guards or the ball handler off the pick and roll, he stuck with those guys. And I know like they're teaching him drop coverage and they want him to be a rim protector.
Right.
And so if you're switching on to the ball handler, you're not a rim protector anymore. But I'd be curious, and this might sound like a really stupid thing to say. I'm not a coach, but I would be curious how the defense would work if they just told James to primarily switch. And like, because I thought, all right, Kyle Lowry isn't the fastest guard. Like maybe you don't do that with De'Aaron Fox. And Jimmy Butler, he's a great player, but he's not known as being one of the fastest guys. But when he switched onto those guys, like he stayed right with them, either forced them to give it up or take a really tough shot. Like Kyle Lowry hit like a rainbow prayer over James Wiseman. Like you can't play better defense. That was just a better shot. I'd be curious to see if they do more of that with James Wiseman defensively in pick and rolls going forward, because like in the drop coverage, he's had trouble this year. Like when he's having to make a decision between, all right, am I guarding the ball handler? Am I guarding the roll man? And then inevitably like a lob is given up for an alley-oop. Was that Detroit where like there was just like even Bam Adebayo last night in the first half, I think got like a pretty thunderous alley-oop when they involved James in the pick and roll. And so, it seems like he has been a step slow. But also, as you mentioned, Cyrus, like that is not easy stuff to learn for a guy who missed all of last season. And he could watch a lot of film and he could get better by watching film. But it's a completely different thing to like actually experience trying to guard Bam Adebayo, right? Like there's only so much you can watch on film. And so like I expect him to get significantly better as the season goes on. Like, and it's going to take a year or two. That's why they picked up his the option for 23-24, right? Like, because there's plenty of promise there. And I think sometimes when he doesn't perform the way he wants to perform defensively, it affects his confidence offensively. Or because like he doesn't normally fumble. He has like pretty decent hands, and like sometimes you'll see him fumble passes out of bounds or like not finish lobs, miss dunks or miss layups that he would normally finish in his sleep. And it's usually coming off defensive possessions where he was at least partly responsible for the team getting an easy basket. And so like I'm not worried by any of that. I think that eventually like he is going to get better defensively. But it's not where it needs to be right now. There's no doubt about that. But I do see signs in every game. He's been much better in the second half of the Detroit and Miami games than he was in his first stint in those games.
Absolutely.
Like he had some really solid rim protection in the second half against Detroit. He had that nice help side block on Jimmy Butler last night. So there was a foul he picked up. It was the second half of Detroit maybe, where he was like mostly vertical, attempting to what was that, Hamidou Diallo going up for a dunk. And Wiseman just kind of made his presence felt. It feels like he gets himself into that second half lather, at least in these last two games. Now it's just about coming out of the gates a little bit stronger.
I've so much patience for Wiseman for the simple reason he's so inexperienced. I mean, like in big picture, this would have been his senior year in college. He missed a whole year. He only played 3 college games his freshman year. So you have to give him a pass because like you said, and especially the Warrior system is so complicated. But defensively, again, that comes last. But that's also why I'm so damn concerned about Kaminga, because for every DNP, those are minutes he's not playing to gain that experience that he needs to become a solid defensive player, solid rebounder, obviously, his offensive skill set. And that is my only qualm with Ty Jerome. And I'll finish the show on that note. I have nothing against them. I understand the Warriors need a ball handler out there. He's not playing bad. I mean, last night he was 2 for 4 from 3. Those were his only field goal attempts. But I don't like that those minutes. Ty Jerome played 13 minutes last night. I just don't like that those minutes are going to Ty Jerome and not Jonathan Kuminga. And where I get frustrated is that if Kerr is making these decisions for the purpose of winning games, you're not winning, dude. Like, they're 3-5. So if you're going to be losing these games, I would much rather have young players out there losing and gaining valuable experience by gaining reps in the process, instead of Kaminga getting a DNP and they still lose the game. That's where my frustration is starting to kick in a little bit, is that, okay, if playing the veterans and playing the guys that you think will help you win games is your mentality, your thought process here, and your approach, fine. If you're winning games, if that's resulting in wins, fine. But they're not. They're 3-5 on the year. They're 0-4 on the road. And that is why I'm a little frustrated with the Ty Jerome minutes. It's not because of him. It's because those are 13 minutes that Kaminga could have had, that he didn't have, and they still lost. So that's where my frustration comes, man. Am I making sense on that at all, or no? I don't. Your thoughts, your final thoughts on everything.
I hear your frustration in wanting to see Jonathan Kuminga play, but he's a completely different position than Ty Jerome. They need the ball handling. Yeah. Dante DiVincenzo is not out there, and that's why Ty Jerome's playing. Right. If Anthony Lamb was getting consistent minutes over Jonathan Kuminga, then I would see the parallel, because they're more or less, now they have different skill sets, but they're more or less similar positionally. If that was kind of the trade-off, by the way, I thought Anthony Lamb did a nice job in Detroit.
Same.
If that was I could see that argument a little more clearly if that was the dynamic. But I don't see it that way, just because, all right, if Ty Jerome's not out there, I mean, they played Jonathan Kuminga at point guard in Summer League, but that's not what he's going to be like in the NBA. He's not going to be certainly at this stage in his career, he's not like a primary ball handler like a Ty Jerome is out there for.
Right.
So it's just the minutes that are there for Kaminga potentially, they aren't going to come from the 13 minutes that Ty Jerome gets.
Well, let me ask you this: when Ty Jerome is out there, is he are the Warriors really lacking in ball handling? Is he really needed that much where you're taking Kaminga out? To me, the very point guard position in today's game particularly is a little overblown to me, just because most of these guys can bring the ball up the court. The entire system of the Warriors, they don't run pick and roll. So you don't really need this outstanding ball handler to set up the offense. It's all about motion and movement to create chaos on the defensive side. And Kaminga could be a part of that process. I don't know, man. I don't get it. And I do wish reporters would ask Kerr about it repeatedly, because we haven't gotten clear answers on the reasons for why. And again, for the big picture, this Warriors team is going to need Kaminga off the bench playing positive minutes if they're going to be successful in the postseason. And he's never going to get to that point if you don't play him. So I'm just perplexed by all this. I don't know, man. But
so I'm trying to look at when he came in the first quarter, who the 5-man lineup was. I'm looking at the game.
Yeah.
So JaMychal Green, Moses Moody, Ty Jerome, James Wiseman, and I can't tell who the fifth one is, because the fifth person didn't make a statistical play. But all right, with those four, who else is going to get the team into their offense?
Moody. I don't know. I mean, but again, I mean, what do you mean by get into the offense? They don't have a traditional offensive system where the point guard's calling the play and running everything.
Someone's got to at least handle the rock. right?
Bring
Like,
it up,
all right,
yeah.
Moses Moody can handle.
I mean,
bring it up, direct the offense and stuff. Like Moses Moody's. I mean, I love Moses Moody. He's not necessarily a point guard, though.
right. But
Like, and I understand that. Like, all right, position. We play a positionless game. I still think like you need another steady hand out there. You need another like steady ball hand.
do you though? I mean, look.
I do think
I'll counter with this. Like the Warriors. Oh, I got to run here.
Okay.
I'm sorry, but the Warriors last year had the equivalent of Ty Jerome last year was Chris Chiozza, and Chiozza didn't see playing time at all for sometimes months, and they were fine despite that. And there was really no one else on the roster who could handle the ball, and they were fine.
GP2 could bring it up.
That, and they were fine. So I don't understand why now you need Ty Jerome. That's when I don't know. Like, and the way the offense runs again, it's not like this isn't like the Portland Trailblazers or the Mavericks where your point guard has a high usage rate. It's like he's just literally just has to dribble the ball up to past the half court line and then get the offense going with passes. All they're doing is just passing and then moving, setting screens. And I just don't see why you need Ty Jerome in there. And again, they're not winning. They're not winning with him. So that's I don't know, man. I could be totally wrong. I could be wrong. Okay, this is just a talk show, and I'm just expressing.
Yeah. No, hey,
but,
we embrace debate. It's like they say on the First Take. No, hey, look, you got very fair points. I'm not saying anything otherwise. Like, no, you make very valid points. To me, I do think you need someone else who can handle the rock.
Right.
That's all I'm saying. And I'm not saying that Jonathan Kuminga can't handle the rock. It's just that, like, that's what Ty Jerome does. Like, and he's like, he comes from Virginia. He knows how to play defense. I think he really gets after it.
He does.
Which I really like about him. And I will say this. I know he was a first-round draft pick. The Warriors didn't draft him in the first round. So, like, they're getting really good value on a two-way contract. And like Chiozza, that's like a traditional two-way contract kind of guy. Like, and I think the Warriors have hit on a lot of two-way guys before with like a Juan Toscano-Anderson and a Damian Lee and a Quinn Cook especially, where like I think maybe sometimes Warriors fans get a little spoiled, like, oh, this two-way guy should come in and just get double figures for us. Like, that's not really how it works. And I do think Ty Jerome on this road trip has been really, really good in all three games for the role that he's playing.
Yeah, that's fair. And again, none of this is hating on Ty Jerome. Yeah. I just
none
of this. I just simply want Kaminga, and I'm just curious what's going on. This Friday, the debut of the Santa Cruz Warriors. Kevin Danna is making the call. Are there still seats available? Are you sold out? Any information you want to share with the audience about this Friday night's game and any future games?
That's a good question. I don't know if it's sold out, but you can find out at santacruzbasketball.com if you can get tickets or not. We usually do sell out the place. And I didn't take it as, hey, look, I want to see Jonathan Kuminga play too, Cyrus. Like, I'm with you on that. I would love to see Kaminga play whenever he gets those minutes, and I do think he will get those minutes soon. But yeah, Ontario Santa Cruz Warriors, you won't see Ty Jerome and Santa Cruz that game because they're going to be in New Orleans. But hopefully, yeah.
Well, and I'm sorry, how can people watch you? Like, is the game's televised, right?
NBC Sports Bay Area, same channel that you watch your Golden State Warriors on, is where you can watch the Santa Cruz Warriors. And when we have a conflict with Golden State, you can catch us on the NBC Sports Bay Area Plus channel. 780, I know, for Xfinity subscribers. I don't know what
There you go. Yeah. So that's if you're bumped by the Warriors at 780. Otherwise, the same channel as the Golden State Warriors, and that's NBC Sports Bay Area. Looking forward to watching you make that call. Always a pleasure, Kevin. I love you, man. You can follow Kevin Danna on Twitter at Kevo408. Follow the Santa Cruz Warriors, I believe, at G League Warriors. I think that's their Twitter handle.
Yep, you got it.
There you go. Thank you, everyone. We'll see you tomorrow. Bye.